What's going on there, YouTube, and welcome back to another comic book video. Alright guys, so we are going to continue our coverage. Wait, scratch that. We are going to begin our coverage over Secret Warriors. Now, when it comes to Secret Warriors, this was actually an idea that spun out of Secret Invasion. Let me explain. So when it came to Secret Invasion, it was this massive storyline where basically you had the Skrulls coming to Earth, kidnapping people, and then pretending to be those people to do a slow invasion. Now, Nick Fury found out and he wanted to stop them. The problem was, though, at that point in Marvel Comics, Nick Fury was kicked out of S.H.I.E.L.D. And the reason why, because there was a 5-part miniseries known as Secret War, where basically Nick Fury broke a bunch of laws. And when he broke those laws, of course he had to go undercover or underground so he could stay hidden from the rest of the world. Because if he was found, well, of course he would be arrested. Now, when he found out about the Skrulls trying to take over the world, what he did was he created a team known as the Secret Warriors, because these group of characters are characters he knew that he could actually trust. And these were characters that people did not know about. Like, other superheroes had no idea about these characters. And also, these were kids who knew they had powers, but did not understand where those powers actually came from. And so that created the Secret Warriors. It was basically Nick Fury going around and getting all these kids to come together to help him try to stop the Skrulls. Now, once the invasion was stopped, now it wasn't because of Nick Fury, because of Norman Osborn. Either way, though, after the invasion was stopped, Nick Fury realized that he still needed this team to do different things behind the scenes, because there is so much corruption in the world, but also the idea that Norman Osborn is the one in charge of protecting America, Homeland Security, that right now he feels like, Norman Osborn cannot be trusted to do things right. But on top of that, there's also other problems that the superheroes or Norman Osborn do not know about. And so that means my Secret Warriors team is going to be used to handle those different problems behind the scene, without anybody actually knowing it was him and his new team of characters. And so with that, it gave birth to the Secret Warriors series, written by Johnthan Hickman. Now, the first story is written by Hickman and also Brian Michael Bendis. And so these two right here work together to kind of tell this story right here, the first one. And honestly, this right here is going to be one of the biggest retcons you see in this video right now. And so getting into today's storyline, we actually do pick up with the team right now in Odessa, Texas. Now, right now, you do have the team basically observing a S.H.I.E.L.D. base. Now, here is something I do want to mention real quick. When the team is out in the field, their team lead is basically Quake. And the reason why, because, well, before this series, and really a couple years ago, Nick Fury and Daisy Johnson had actually worked together when they both worked for S.H.I.E.L.D. And on top of that, Nick Fury basically trained her as well because he knew about her powers. Now, with all that being said, though, when Nick Fury was creating this team, going around trying to grab all these different characters, the first person he grabbed was Daisy Johnson, Quake. And the reason why, because they're past with one another. He knows how great of a person she is, but on top of that, he looks at her kind of like, you can be a great leader one day down the road with the proper training. And so this is your chance to get that training by being a leader of a team of new people who are trying to learn how to use their powers and learn where their powers have basically come from. Now, with all that being said, right now you do have the team in Odessa, Texas, observing a S.H.I.E.L.D. base. And the reason why they're observing this base in Odessa is because, well, Shield is no longer around. And that right there is a huge problem because right after Secret Invasion, spoiler alert, basically Shield was shut down. And the reason why, because Tony Stark was the one in charge of Shield. He was basically put in charge of Shield after Nick Fury had left. The problem was, though, the Skrulls were able to hack into his systems, and of course, some of those systems were in place in S.H.I.E.L.D. systems. And so when he got hacked, S.H.I.E.L.D. got hacked. And so the American government felt like that S.H.I.E.L.D. was no longer a good fit to protect America. And because Norman Osborn had basically saved the world, they put him in charge instead. He replaced S.H.I.E.L.D. with Hammer. And so this storyline does take place right in the middle of Dark Reign, the period of time where basically you had Norman Osborn in charge of Homeland Security. Now, with all that being said, though, the reason why they're observing this S.H.I.E.L.D. base, because again, it is a S.H.I.E.L.D. base, but for some strange reason, it hasn't been shut down completely and taken over by Hammer yet. And that right there is a problem. Now, while you have the team observing this base, that is the moment a bunch of Hydra agents have appeared. Now, remember, Hydra is one of those old Marvel organizations that has been around for decades on decades. But usually, if you see them somewhere, they got some big master plan coming down the road. Now, with that being said, though, with Hydra being here, it's kind of like, why is Hydra at this S.H.I.E.L.D. base? And so you do have our heroes actually jump in to basically stop Hydra. The problem is, though, as soon as they jump in, the Sentry arrives. Now, the reason why the Sentry is here because he's part of the Dark Avengers. So when Norman Osborn took over protecting America, Homeland Security, he formed his own Avengers team called the Dark Avengers. And Sentry was one of those characters. And so we see Sentry right now with a bunch of Hammer agents. And again, Hammer was the idea Norman had to replace S.H.I.E.L.D. with. But either way, you have the Sentry and Hammer arrive to stop Hydra. The problem is that as soon as Sentry and all those Hammer agents had arrived, well, Quake and her team of secret warriors had jumped in to stop Hydra originally. And so now they have to retreat because they honestly do not stand a chance against both Hammer and Hydra, but definitely not against a Sentry, somebody who's just way too powerful. And so you do have the secret warriors just basically retreat. They get the heck out of there. But when they do, Daisy Johnson does see Hydra being able to take a case of something and they teleport away. And the question is right now, what was inside that case? Now, when the team actually arrives back to the base, of course, they're confronted by Nick Fury. Now, this base was made off the books, so no one knows about this base at all. Because remember, right now, Nick Fury and his team, no one knows about them, but on top of that, Nick Fury has to stay hidden from the rest of the world because he broke a bunch of laws. Either way, though, right now you do have the team coming back to their base where they're confronted by Nick Fury. And of course, you have Nick Fury show that he's very upset with what the team basically did. And what happened was that the team was supposed to just observe the base and that is it, to gather intel about the base. And if Hydra did appear, again, just gather intel, that is it. But because the team saw Hydra, they stepped in to basically stop Hydra. Because again, it was a S.H.I.E.L.D. base that should have been shut down and replaced by Hammer by that point. But of course, Hammer has not done that yet. And so it still was just a regular S.H.I.E.L.D. base that was just left out there, but not being operated by anybody at all. And so to them, I'm kind of like, listen, there was a lot of different things in that S.H.I.E.L.D. base. We freaked out when we saw Hydra basically taking things out of that base. And so it felt like to us the right move to basically step in. But it's Nick Fury saying, I wanted you guys to gather intel so that I can confirm something I had doubts about, I learned about earlier in this year. And so it's kind of like if Nick had told them that, then maybe they would have done a better job. But because Nick did not tell them everything, it seems like, hey, we failed because you didn't actually tell us everything you wanted us to do. Now, JT Hellfire, he's very upset with how Nick Fury runs the team. He feels like Nick Fury needs to basically tell more information about these different kinds of missions before the team actually goes on those missions. But it's Nick Fury kind of like, no, I don't have to, because again, I'm Nick Fury and you're just JT Hellfire, the son or the grandson of the original Ghost Rider. Who cares? And so Nick Fury walks away, but he tells Daisy to follow him. Now, you do have the two characters actually go and check up on Phobos. Now, Phobos is actually the son of Ares. Now, I do want to mention one thing. When it comes to Phobos, and I really hope I'm pronouncing the name correctly, but when it comes to Phobos, in Marvel Comics, there has been different versions of the character. But at this point in Marvel Comics, this is the actual son of the god of war, Ares. Now, with that being said, Nick Fury had also recruited this kid because no one knew about this kid at all. Like, everyone knew about Ares, the god of war, but no one knew that this guy had a son named Phobos. Now, when it comes to Phobos, he does have a lot of different abilities, but at this moment right now, they're kind of showing off the idea of how smart he is. And so with him being so smart, it will play a role down the road in later stories down the road, and so will the rest of his abilities as well. But Nick Fury wants to make sure that this god right here will grow up and be a great hero and not be like his father, Ares, the god of war. Even though right now at this point, Ares is technically part of the Avengers, I want to say. Or he was. I forgot. I want to say he was an Avenger until basically Norman Osborn took over. Either way, though, it's Nick Fury saying, like, we have to watch over this kid and hopefully train him in the correct way to make sure that he does not cause us problems down the road. But after that, you then have Nick Fury kind of explain why he was kind of upset with what Daisy Johnson and her team basically did in the field. Because again, he wanted them to just observe the SHIELD base. That is it. Because again, he was trying to gather intel. But now it's Daisy Johnson realizing that something has spooked Nick Fury. And if something has spooked Nick Fury, that means right then and there, something really bad is going to happen down the road. Because Nick Fury is not somebody who gets easily spooked by anything at all in the universe. So if he gets spooked, that means something bad is about to happen, or it already did happen. But then we actually pick up with Nick Fury 1 month ago. And right now, we actually see him in Chicago. Now, right now in Chicago, he's breaking into another base that's owned by SHIELD. Now, with that being said, of course, it seems like it's one of those bases that still operates as SHIELD, but hasn't fully been taken over by Hammer yet. Either way, though, you have Nick Fury basically breaking into this base in Chicago. And when he does, he was able to actually access information the base was holding. Now, you would think that because he has been kicked out of SHIELD, that he has no longer the ability to hack into the system or to access the system that SHIELD has about different things that SHIELD knows about. But this is Nick Fury showing us that he had access codes that no one else knew about, just in case he ever got kicked out of SHIELD, that he could use to override the system so that he could access the system. Either way, though, when he does access the system, he does download a bunch of information. And the information that he downloaded is going to be very important for this storyline. And so then we see Nick Fury actually breaking into the White House. Now, this actually happens 2 days prior from the present day, but 28 days after Chicago. Now, with all that being said, this is Nick Fury sitting down with the president for two things. The first is that it's Nick Fury wanting to know, why in the world did the president let the government basically get rid of SHIELD and replace SHIELD with Hammer. And so you have the president tell Nick Fury that the reason why SHIELD was destroyed and replaced with Hammer is because the president and the American government wanted more control over some organization that was made to protect America. And when it came to SHIELD, they honestly did not have full control over SHIELD. But with Hammer, they can. Now, honestly, they really can't because it's Norman Osborn. He's a crazy bad guy. Either way, you did have Nick Fury basically say, okay, fine, whatever. But here's the thing, though. I was the one who attacked that SHIELD base in Chicago. It's Nick Fury telling the president about that moment. And the reason why, because that was one of the bases across America that no one really knew about except maybe Nick Fury and a handful of other people. But those bases should be shut down by now. And the reason why, because those bases are holding a lot of different things. But on top of that, those bases are very important for something else we're going to see down the road. And so this is Nick Fury saying, I have 9 locations of bases that were basically kept off the book. Here is the list of those bases, and you need to basically shut down those bases before something else big happens in America. And so we actually do jump back over to Nick Fury and Daisy Johnson in the present day. And this is really Nick Fury explaining to Daisy what he's trying to tell her, what he's so spooked about. And what he is saying is that basically, when it comes to the idea of these bases across America, there are 9 of them. And these 9 bases should have been secured by now because these 9 bases were originally kept off SHIELD books. But either way, though, someone in SHIELD knew about these 9 bases. And so when Hammer took over SHIELD, that information should have gotten over to Hammer so that they could basically secure those bases. The problem is, though, Hammer did not know about all 9 different bases. But here's the thing, though. When Nick Fury broke into the base in Chicago, he was able to get that list of 9 bases. And so when he went to the White House, he did give the president a list, but he only gave 2 of the 9 locations to the president. And the reason why, because he wants to make sure that the current administration in office right now can be trusted. And so he only gave him 2 of the 9 for the time being. But with that being said, though, those 2 locations are very important because one of those locations were actually secured by Hammer, meaning that that base is cleared now by Hammer. The other base, though, was in Odessa, Texas, the ones that basically Quake and her team were at, and they were supposed to observe and not do anything else. And the reason why Nick Fury is saying these 9 bases are very important because it ties back into Hydra. And so this is Nick Fury saying that Hydra was not attacking these bases. Hydra was not actually breaking into these bases. Hydra was going to these bases to basically take things they had already there, meaning that these 9 SHIELD bases across America were never actually SHIELD. They were Hydra, which means that Hydra, for who knows how long, has been somewhat controlling SHIELD this entire time. And so it's Nick Fury saying, technically, I have been working for the bad guys without actually knowing I was working for the bad guys. And that is one of the biggest retcons we're seeing right now in Marvel Comics and in the storyline. Because now you're saying that SHIELD had possibly never had just worked for the American government, but possibly have been working for Hydra in helping Hydra without even knowing they were helping Hydra out. And so getting into the second issue, we actually pick up with the underwater city that's actually owned by Hydra. Yes, they do have an underwater city. Just go with it. Either way, though, with this underwater city is right now being run by Baron von Strucker. Now, when it comes to Hydra, you usually have one leader for Hydra, But sometimes, occasionally, you have multiple leaders, and sometimes you have a civil war in the actual Hydra organization. Now, at this point right now, Baron von Strucker is kind of in charge of this city, or this particular group of Hydra, or this branch of Hydra. Either way, though, right now we're told that this section right here takes place 3 months in the past, but on top of that, it also takes place right in the middle of Secret Invasion. And that right there is actually very important. And the reason why, because when we actually pick up with Baron von Strucker, you do have some random agents of Hydra coming into his office to tell them the news, or tell him, sorry, about the news of what's happening right now across the world, where basically different operations or different organizations have been taken over by this alien race known as the Skrulls. But apparently Hydra has been untouched, meaning that no Skrull has been able to actually invade the Hydra organization, which right there tells Baron von Strucker that can't be true. And the reason why, because when it comes to the Skrulls, they're trying to invade the entire Earth. And you want to make sure that you have somebody in every single organization across the world to make sure that your invasion could actually be accomplished. And so with that being said, it's Baron von Strucker realizing, these 3 agents are basically lying to me, that they are actually Skrulls. And also, he has a way to know that they are Skrulls. And so he tells them, I know that you are Skrulls. I know that basically right now, you're here to take me out, to replace me, and then use Hydra for your own personal needs. I am not going to actually let that happen. And so you have Baron von Strucker kill off these Skrulls that were pretending to be Hydra agents, and then he blows up the entire underwater city base. The entire city. He even says there was probably 10,000 folks down there of Hydra agents, but I had no choice because I had no idea how many Skrulls have replaced my agents. But to make sure that basically they are dead and there's no one else in there to betray me, I blew up the entire underwater city. Gone just like that, because it was him realizing that the Skrulls have begun the process of actually taking over everything across the world. And so getting back over to the present day and actually picking up with Daisy Johnson and Nick Fury, this is basically Nick Fury telling Daisy Johnson, yes, what I just told you is the truth. That in reality, this entire time when I was working for S.H.I.E.L.D., our S.H.I.E.L.D. has been around, Hydra was secretly controlling S.H.I.E.L.D., which means that every single time Nick Fury or anybody who had a connection to S.H.I.E.L.D. was actually stopping Hydra, they weren't really actually stopping Hydra. It was part of Hydra's plan to pretend that they were basically being stopped. But in reality, it was just another way for them to continue on with their master plans to control the entire world. And so it's Nick Fury saying that this entire time we have been helping them and not actually stopping them. And so now we have to change that. We need to wake up, meaning that we need to tell Hydra that we know what they have been doing. And when they realize that we know, that is when we are going to get even with them. And so then we jump back 1 month ago where we actually pick up with Baron von Strucker once again. And when we do, we actually see him right now in New Zealand in this new base where, of course, you do have his assistant coming to him and telling him, hey, boss, listen, we're getting a lot of new recruits. This is great. We're in the thousands. Don't worry. Sooner or later, we can actually make up our loss from the underwater city explosion. Now, while you have the 2 characters actually talking to one another, well, that is the moment she tells Baron von Strucker, oh, by the way, Nick Fury attacked a base in Chicago and gathered some intel about you-know-what, the 9 bases across America. And so this tells Baron von Strucker that Nick Fury finally realized that this entire time they have been battling against each other throughout all these years was basically for nothing because Hydra was controlling S.H.I.E.L.D. And so this is Baron von Strucker saying, about time. About time you finally realized, but you found out a little bit too late, and now it's time for me to make sure you're stopped before you could ruin the rest of my plans. Now, getting back into the present day, we actually do pick up with Daisy Johnson meeting up with the rest of the team. Now, when she does, of course, she's telling the team, hey guys, listen, we just got our next mission. Like basically the boss want us to wrap up dinner, get back to base, and get ready for our next mission, which right now we have to handle. Now, remember guys, earlier we saw JT Hellfire kind of not liking the idea of being bossed around by Nick Fury. And so he feels like Nick Fury needs to kind of open up more and actually be a better boss than he is right now. Either way, you do have most of the characters kind of ignore him completely. Now, this is also the section where you have Phobos actually tell everybody their possible future to come down the road, because that's one of his powers where he could see a possible future. It doesn't mean it's actually going to happen, but it could possibly happen. Now, when it comes to Phobos, he does look over to Yo-Yo. And really, hers is the most important. And the reason why, because when it comes to Yo-Yo, what he's saying is that basically something is going to happen to her. Something very seriously bad is going to happen to her. And Stonewall is going to watch over her. And that right there is actually very important because it could possibly happen down the road in this video or the next one. But either way, you do have the team wrap up dinner and they say, okay, fine, let's go ahead and get back to base and see what in the world Nick Fury has planned for us this time. But getting back over to New Zealand, we actually do pick up with Baron von Strucker calling in the rest of the leaders of Hydra, which means that he plans to bring in the 5 leaders of Hydra to begin the process of doing some master plan against Nick Fury, but the rest of the world. And so besides him, you also have Viper, you also have Madam Hydra, you have Kraken, and you have the Hive. Now, this is only 4 out of the 5. There's still one more they're basically waiting for. But getting back to the present day, we actually pick up with Nick Fury talking to the Secret Warriors. And when he does, he tells them, hey guys, listen, here's the big news. Hydra this entire time has been controlling S.H.I.E.L.D. And so it's time for us to fight back. It's time for us to attack them back and do something crazy. But I need someone to basically go undercover into Hydra. And it's kind of like, who will that person actually be? And so then we jump 2 days in the past. Now, when we do, we actually pick up with the Temple of Resurrection. And this actually belongs to the Hand. Now, remember, the Hand is basically this ninja organization that's evil, really, but also has their hand, no pun intended, into different kinds of operations and organizations across the world. Now, with that being said, though, they also worship a demon as their god. Now, here comes the thing. The Hand and Hydra are right now talking about a deal. And this makes sense because if you have been following our Secret Invasion coverage, we basically saw that when Elektra was replaced by a Skrull, that Skrull Elektra was trying to actually regain control of the Hand away from Hydra. But we saw that she was able to. But it seems like some parts of the Hand was still being controlled by Hydra. And so when we actually pick up with this section right here, we see that this group may be still controlled by Hydra. And right now is Hydra saying, listen, we had a deal that sooner or later, we want you guys to bring somebody back to life. And right now we're ready because we went to our base in Odessa, Texas, and we took that container that was basically holding the dead body of our 5th leader of Hydra. And so you have the Hand use their dark magic to bring this person back to life. And we come to find out it is Gorgon. Gorgon is the 5th leader of the Hydra group. And with that being said, he also has the ability to turn you to stone if you look into his eyes. Either way, now all the leaders of Hydra are here now. But then we jump over to the 3rd issue. Now, when we do kind of find out that basically the 3rd issue does pick up 2 weeks after the 2nd issue. And so in those 2 weeks, you basically had Hydra go to those different bases that were originally kept off the book by Hydra. Because remember, those bases were made by S.H.I.E.L.D., but in reality, they were Hydra bases, since Hydra had technically owned S.H.I.E.L.D. in some kind of way. And so with that, the last 2 weeks, Hydra has been going to the different bases across America that were kept off book, that were originally thought to be S.H.I.E.L.D. bases, but actually be Hydra bases. Now, with that being said, though, only 2 bases are left. There's one base that was already secured by Hammer. The other base, though, is the one that's left that Hydra has not attacked yet. And so, of course, right now you have Nick Fury and Daisy saying the Secret Warriors are going to the last base that Hydra has basically not attacked yet and try to recover their lost items. On top of that, this is the moment you have the Secret Warriors kind of learn about the different leaders of Hydra except Gorgon. Because even though he was brought back to life, they have no intel or the idea that he's also on the list right now as leaders of Hydra. Now, this also the moment where you have JT, aka Hellfire, show again his attitude towards Nick Fury. Because again, he hates the idea of just doing these observe missions. He wants to actually fight and show off his ability as a fighter. But this is Nick Fury putting him in his place and say, when you're out in the field, Daisy is in charge. When you're here, I'm in charge. But if Daisy says you are only going to observe and that is it, then you are only going to do that. I have no idea why you're on this power trip right now, but boy, sit down before you make a big mistake by coming after me. Now, while you have the Secret Warriors going to that other location that Hydra is about to attack, we actually pick up with Nick Fury meeting up with Valentina Allegra de Fontaine. Yes, that's her whole name, and yes, I hope I pronounced that correctly, but we're going to call her Valentina. Now, when it comes to Valentina, she's actually an old lover of Nick Fury, and usually when these two characters actually meet up, occasionally they do make love, but 9 out of 10 times, when you see Nick Fury coming to her, it's really more of like, hey man, listen, I need your help with something, and you are the only person that I actually trust when it comes to accomplishing these different things. Now, of course, for Valentina, she's kind of like, it's kind of weird how Nick Fury is calling for my help when he's no longer working for S.H.I.E.L.D. So why in the world are you calling for my help when you no longer work for S.H.I.E.L.D.? Now, you don't have Nick Fury flat out and tell her why he wants her help, but this is him trying to see if she's someone that he can actually trust still, and on top of that, he's hoping that he can convince her to actually help him with a certain kind of task. Now, while they're having dinner with one another in Mexico, it's still also showing that she'll do anything for Nick Fury because how much she cares for him. But at the same time, though, she's like, I don't trust you, and I know you don't trust me. Now, picking up with the Secret Warriors, they actually do go to the Red Worm. And the Red Worm is actually the last base that hasn't been touched by Hydra. Or well, that's what they believe. Because when the Secret Warriors actually arrive at that location, they do see that Hydra is already there. And of course, these agents are with Gorgon. And this does tell the Secret Warriors that basically, hey, this is possibly the last leader of the Hydra group. Now they have their 5 leaders. What are they planning to do? Now you do have the Secret Warriors kind of observing again, try to see what Hydra is planning to do. Now Hydra had already took some shield agents that were still there at that facility and begin the process of actually killing them off. Now when they do that, of course, you do have the Secret Warriors say, okay, we have to jump in and save those people. And so it does lead into a battle between the Secret Warriors against Hydra and Gorgon. Now, Gorgon is a very powerful character by himself, but with the help of Hydra agents, honestly, the Secret Warriors do not stand a chance. And so with that being said, while they're fighting against Gorgon and the Hydra agents, you do realize that they're having a hard time winning this battle. And so they're like, hey, we have to retreat. And so they try to use Yo-Yo as a way to kind of basically help with the escape process. And remember, when it comes to Yo-Yo, she has super speed, but you also have to remember that she was told earlier by Phobos that there is a possibility something seriously bad is going to happen to her. And it does right here. Because when she tries to attack Gorgon to help the others to get away, he basically cuts her so bad she loses both of her arms. She flies away and crashes. They're all like, oh my God, she's seriously injured. We have to escape right now. Now, you do have Phobos being this god trying to actually stand up against Gorgon, but this is Daisy reminding the little boy they have to leave because one of their own just got cut really bad. And honestly, they need to get her out of here to basically get her somewhere for some medical help. And so they all leave. But when they all leave, you did have Gorgon tell Phobos that sooner or later he is going to kill a god, meaning that he's coming after Gorgon. Now, of course, with her getting seriously injured, they do realize that they have to take her somewhere so that she'll find or get some medical help, which you do have Nick Fury say he does have a base somewhere where basically he does have some robots that will be able to actually help Yo-Yo and give her some medical help. But after they're able to get to that location, you have Nick Fury pull Daisy to the side and say the Secret Warriors are basically benched. He's all like, listen, until Yo-Yo is back on her feet right now, you have to find your replacement. And so your next goal is to find your replacement. Now for Daisy, she's kind of like, what about Hydra? We're on Hydra case right now. I should continue to be working on that. But this is Nick Fury saying, no, you're bench. I'll handle Hydra. And so this is Nick Fury saying, I'm going to call in another team to actually help out with this situation with Hydra. And so he calls up Dumb Dugan. And he's all like, hey man, listen, it's time for us to get the team together. But getting into the 4th chapter, we actually do pick up with Daisy Johnson, Quake, and also Drood right now in Australia. Now they flew there, but the problem is though, Drood crashed a plane. And so they have to walk the rest of the way to the location that they're trying to get to. And of course, they're trying to recruit somebody to replace Yo-Yo. Now this character that they are trying to replace has the ability to teleport almost anywhere across the universe, thanks to his ability to warp reality in a way to teleport him and anybody else around him to a specific location. Either way, though, right now they're going to basically recruit Manifold. And this is actually very important because if you saw my videos over Avengers and New Avengers by Johnthan Hickman, you know that Manifold is a very important character in that series. And so right now, this is Hickman beginning to do the work on the character to build him up so that he'll be used in later books down the road. But at first, he's like, oh, so I know that you guys are here to recruit me, but I might have to say no. But then we pick up with Nick Fury. But this actually brings in the idea of the Howling Commandos, because Nick Fury is going to make a new version of the Howling Commandos. Now, the Howling Commandos were basically a military group that was sent on different missions by the military to basically deal with different things happening across the world that could affect America. Now, when it comes to the Howling Commandos, they were led by Nick Fury. But we were told that this team has been around for decades on decades on decades, but been led by Nick Fury. And of course, that does bring into question, if this team been around for so long, how come Nick Fury is not old or super old to the point where he can barely walk? Why he looks so young? Well, thanks to the Infinity Formula. Thanks to that formula, it basically slowed down Nick Fury's aging process. And because he took that formula over and over and over again throughout a good amount of years, well, of course, it definitely slowed down his aging process. And so that is how he's still around right now, but still looks somewhat young and being able to actually function in today's society. Now, with that being said, though, this is him trying to bring back the Howling Commandos, but in a different kind of way. But then we actually pick up with JT and also Phobos. Now, right now, you have JT and Phobos kind of looking around the office of Nick Fury to basically find different things that Nick Fury is hiding from them. But on top of that, hoping that they'll be able to get some information on what's really happening with Nick Fury in this Hydra situation. Now, while the two characters are looking around, of course, they do find a hidden passageway. And when they do, of course, they walk into a room, and that room they find a bunch of life model decoys. Now, these life model decoys are basically robots, but they look so real that if someone actually used one of them, you believe it's the actual person. But in reality, it's just a robot. And Nick Fury is known to using a lot of life model decoys as a way to make sure that he's not trapped in some kind of situation. And 9 out of 10 times, people actually believe that they are talking to Nick Fury, but in reality, it's never Nick Fury. And so they're kind of like, what in the world is going on here? Now, getting back over to Nick Fury in the Howling Commandos, you do have Dum Dum Dugan and some other members of the Howling Commandos tell them what is their current situation, because most of the members of the Howling Commandos were part of S.H.I.E.L.D. because Nick Fury was part of S.H.I.E.L.D. But when S.H.I.E.L.D. basically got taken down and replaced by Hammer, most of the Howling Commandos said, fine, forget it. We're going to jump ship as well and continue to be the Howling Commandos, but not be part of S.H.I.E.L.D. nor Hammer. We're just contractors now for different kinds of missions across the world. But this is Nick Fury saying he needs the Howling Commandos to kind of deal with the Hydra problem. Now, here's the thing, though. You do have Dum Dum Dugan say, listen, when it comes to the Howling Commandos Corporation or this organization we're trying to build, our army is small. And the reason why, because right now, most of the men they had originally who were part of S.H.I.E.L.D., well, they joined Hammer because they still needed some kind of salary. And so it's Dum Dum Dugan say, listen, we do have a small army here. And most of these men, like us, did not want to join Hammer. And so they left S.H.I.E.L.D., they left Hammer, and joined us here for the Howling Commandos Corporation. But when it comes to some men we used to have, those men had no choice but to join Hammer because they needed money to take care of their family, their wife and kids. And so this is Nick Fury kind of like, okay, you're telling me you have a small army, you have a small base, we can still work with this as a way to attack Hydra, to get back at them for all the years for playing with us and pretending that they had no control over S.H.I.E.L.D., but in reality, they did. But then we pick up with Daisy Johnson, aka Quake, and Druid. And of course, right now, they're trying to convince Manifold to basically join them and become a new member of the Secret Warriors. Now, at first, he does say no. And the reason why, because another character known as Gateway, who has the ability to also teleport, tells Manifold, no, you are not ready. Well, originally he told him no before Daisy Johnson and the Druid arrived to try to basically recruit Manifold. But then you have Gateway say, no, you can join her team. Now, this is actually very important because this is Gateway telling Manifold, I told you no, you can't join Nick Fury's team, but you can join her team. And so it's kind of like, wait, what do you mean Nick Fury's team, but he can join my team? Does Nick Fury have another team out there that we don't know about? And so Gateway's kind of like, I can't tell you, but you can take Manifold. He can join your little team right now if he wants to. And of course, you do have Manifold say yes, he's down to join this team. But then we pick up with the leaders of Hydra. Now, this is the leaders of Hydra coming together and basically finding out that Nick Fury knows about the idea that S.H.I.E.L.D. was never actually taking down Hydra piece by piece. In reality, Hydra controls S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hydra was using S.H.I.E.L.D. to build up Hydra piece by piece. And so this is the leaders of Hydra coming together to actually say, we should attack Nick Fury, get rid of him before he ruins our entire organization completely by doing different things across the board. Now, there is something else I do want to mention because this is actually going to be very important because when it comes to Hydra, Viper, who you see on the screen right now, she used to be known as Madam Hydra, but also Viper. But at this point in Marvel Comics, she's just Viper. And her other code name, Madam Hydra, now belongs to somebody else. The question is, though, who is Madam Hydra? Because Viper was Madam Hydra, but she's no longer Madam Hydra. And so we have a new character right now pretending to be Madam Hydra, but we have no idea who it is yet. Getting back over to Nick Fury in the Howling Commandos, this is really Nick Fury telling us, the readers, that even though they have a small army of the Howling Commandos Corporation, this is still good enough army to basically attack Hydra. Now, you do have some members of the Howling Commandos questioning Nick Fury in the way of like, are you going to be okay when you have to shoot people who used to work for S.H.I.E.L.D. but had no choice but to work for Hammer as a way to basically support their family? Because if you shoot and kill them, then their family no longer has their father, their mother, their brother, sister, whatever. But for Nick Fury, it's kind of like, listen, I am not going to have any kind of hard feelings when I kill someone off to basically help with this mission. We are going to attack Hydra in their base and hopefully do some damage to Hydra. But at the same time, if some of our own men get in the way because they had no choice to join Hammer or to join Hydra, honestly, I cannot feel bad for them. And so this is Nick Fury saying, let's go. We're going to attack Hydra where it actually hurts. Now, jumping into the 5th chapter, we actually do pick up with a couple agents right now who work for Hammer talking to one another. Now, one of them is important. His name is Eric, and you'll see why here in a moment. But while you have the two agents talking to one another, one of them is kind of like a brand new agent, but not to Hammer, but he was new to S.H.I.E.L.D. And what I mean is that in the 2 years he worked for S.H.I.E.L.D., at the end of his 2nd year, of course, S.H.I.E.L.D. went away, and then Hammer came in, and he had no choice but to join Hammer as a way to kind of support his life. But when it comes to Eric been around for years and years and years. He says 28 years I was with S.H.I.E.L.D. It sucks that S.H.I.E.L.D. is gone, but I with Hammer. Now, of course, you have Eric begin to talk to this other guy, the newer guy. And while they're talking, you basically have this guy kind of try to give away a hint like, you should probably go somewhere rather than be here. And the reason why, because Eric is one of the Howling Commandos who's working for Nick Fury. And so by the time the newer guy finds out, he looks up to the sky and see a bunch of helicopters coming in at a very fast pace. And he's like, hey, what are those? We need to call that in. And bam, he's shot from behind by Eric because, again, Eric is part of the Howling Commandos. And the helicopters that are coming in right now are, of course, Nick Fury and the rest of the Howling Commandos militia. Now, you're probably wondering, why in the world is Nick Fury actually attacking this Hammer base, but not really going after Hydra? Because Nick Fury knows that if Hydra had their hands in Shield, then most likely Hydra have their hands also in Hammer. And so basically, this is really more Nick Fury saying, if we attack this Hammer base, two things going to happen. One, nothing at all, or two, Hydra is going to appear. And so while you have Hammer and Shield, or really the Howling Commandos and Hammer fighting against one another, Hydra's on the sideline like, we're ready to go. Everybody is in position. And I just realized that all three organizations who's going to fight in this battle all start with H. Hammer, Hydra, and Howling Commandos. Either way, though, you do have all three team members, or all three teams, about to fight against one another. But then we pick up with the generals of Hydra 13 hours ago. Now, this is the moment where we actually learn that when it comes to the generals, they actually heard from somebody, an inside source from the Howling Commandos, that Nick Fury was actually going to attack Hammer base. Now, this is the perfect time for Hydra to actually attack Nick Fury in the Howling Commandos, because Hydra knows that if they want to go ahead and finish this battle against Nick Fury, they have to do it now, because if they allow him to live, it's going to be a long war. And if this war goes on, Nick Fury is going to win. And when he does win, it's all over for basically Hydra. And so this is Hydra saying, release the Horde, so that we can basically go ahead and wrap up this battle here and now. And so getting back to the present day, we actually do pick up with the battle between Hydra, Hammer, and also the Howling Commandos. Now, this battle does go on for a good while. And matter of fact, with this battling going on, you do have a lot of sides basically losing a lot of men and women. Now, as the battle does continue on, you do have Nick Fury actually look over to Gorgon. Now, when he does, he's all like, ooh, Gorgon's here. I hate him, he hates me. Now, Gorgon wants to actually kill off Nick Fury, but of course he fails when he tries to kill Nick Fury. But as the battle goes on, Nick Fury is actually trapped by Kraken and Baron von Strucker. And it does look like there is a possibility that Nick Fury is about to die. The problem is, though, and really it's a problem for Hydra, not Nick Fury, that while you have Hydra thinking they're about to win the battle between Hydra, Hammer, and also Howling Commandos, that is the moment you do have the Secret Warriors arrive in time to actually help out the Howling Commandos defeat Hydra. But then we actually jump back a couple hours ago and we actually pick up with the Secret Warriors. And we see how they were basically called in to actually deal with this situation. Because when it comes to the Secret Warriors, they're telling us that while they were at the base just chilling and minding their business, well, that was the moment they got a call from Nick Fury saying, hey, we need your help. Like the panic button for Nick Fury is saying he needs help and you guys need to get there right now to basically help him out. Now, this does confuse the Secret Warriors. And the reason why, because when it comes to the Secret Warriors, they thought they were benched. Matter of fact, Nick Fury said, you guys are basically benched. And the reason why, because y'all need to basically train your team while I deal with Hydra with the Howling Commandos. But now it seems like he does need help. And they're like, hey, we got to go. Let's go help him right now. Now, when it comes to the battle does turn into the favor of the Howling Commandos and also Secret Warriors, because now Hydra has to deal with two different groups, and the Secret Warriors are a group of characters who basically have some powers on them that could do some heavy damage. And so right now, is Hydra actually losing this battle? But here comes the thing, though. Some of the leaders are not actually here when it comes to Hydra. Madam Hydra and Viper are both missing. And the question is right now, where are they? Because we kind of find out that right now they are in Japan. Now, the reason why they're in Japan, because right now they're making the deal with the Silver Samurai and his clan. Now, when it comes to the Silver Samurai, his clan is one of the most powerful families in Japan. But on top of that, Silver Samurai has a long time connection with Viper. Even when she was Madam Hydra, they still had a long time connection. But this is where we kind of find out why Viper was so close to Silver Samurai. And the reason why? Because she basically needed some kind of box from him. And so now she has the box. She's kind of like, listen, this entire time where it seemed like I may liked you and you liked me, we could have been a couple. You need to realize I basically used you because I wanted this box. Now, we have no idea what's inside the box, but this is her really telling him that is the reason why I actually came to you for. And so they leave. Now, getting back over to the battle between the Howling Commandos, Hydra, and also Hammer, we kind of find out that basically Hammer had gave up. Hydra also gave up. Howling Commandos and the Secret Warriors won the battle, and they can see another day. Now, as soon as they won the battle, this is where we kind of learn what Nick Fury was trying to do with this battle. He was trying to do a number to Hydra by basically taking out some of their agents, but also beating up on their leaders. But at the same time, now you have 3,000 men who used to work for Hammer, have quit Hammer, and now going to work for the Howling Commandos militia. And so now the Howling Commandos military has been built up even more. And so now their numbers have even gotten better. And right there is a very important piece of information. And so you do have the Secret Warriors, the Howling Commandos, and also Nick Fury. They all go back to their separate ways. But this is Nick Fury telling Dum Dum Dugan, the Howling Commandos militia, the numbers need to be higher, which means you need to recruit more people. And we need to gather more money to basically pay these guys. But what we're doing right now can actually help us down the road. So this is a good start. But then one day later, we actually pick up with Nick Fury and also Quake talking to one another about the button. Because remember, she got a call earlier that Nick Fury needed help. And so she thought it was Nick Fury calling for help. We kind of find out Nick Fury never called for help. Matter of fact, someone else hit the button. And the question is, though, who hit the button? Now, Nick Fury kind of gives her the idea that he does know who hit the button, but he's not going to tell her who he believes who hit the button. And so we're left to wonder who actually did hit the button. Now, as Quake leaves the office, you do have Nick Fury get a call. And that call is actually from Angelina. Now, this comes into a very huge, shocking moment. And the reason why it's such a huge, shocking moment is because we kind of find out that the new Madam Hydra is actually Angelina. And she's right now holding the box that Silver Samurai gave her and Viper earlier. And so now we know that Angelina had joined Hydra, but she's telling Nick Fury that she has not been bad enough just yet, meaning that she plans to do something else down the road. The question is, though, what? And this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So with that being said, please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But also, if you have any suggestions on books I should read, please let me know in the comments below, because you never know, your suggestion could be a future video down the road. But guys, I'll see y'all next time. Later.